Oh, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of First Canada Live. It is 2023. It's a new year and it's a new FRC season. That's right, we are getting charged up. We got a lot happening on today's show, but before we get started, as Canadians, it is important to recognize the land of which we are a part. As we gather for this meeting, physically dispersed and virtually constructed, let's take a moment to reflect upon the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognize the various traditional lands on which we celebrate today. We acknowledge the elders and youth, past, present, and emerging, of all the land on which we work and live. We honor our ancestral spirits with gratitude and respect. We acknowledge that this land we acknowledge this land out of respect for the Indigenous nations who have cared for Turtle Island, also called North America. The Indigenous people have been gifted the role of caretakers of this land before the arrival of settler peoples until today. But most importantly, we must remember the history of these lands and people that have been tainted by poor treatment and a lack of friendship with the First Nations who called Canada home before it was given this name. This history is something that everyone is affected by. We are all treaty people in Canada. We all have a shared history to reflect on, and each of us is affected by this history in different ways. Our past defines our future. Our past defines our present, but if we move forward as friends and allies, it does not define our future. All right, folks, we got a lot going on here. So to get us started, let me introduce our co-host for today's show. She is a student on First Robotics Competition Team 7712, ACCN Umoja, and a member of the First Canada Youth Council. Welcome, Amelia. How's it going, Amelia?
It's going amazing. I'm so excited for the launch.
I know. So how was your weekend, seeing the new game?
It was amazing. I was like on the edge of my seat. I was like, oh my goodness, it's finally happening.
It's right. It's finally happening because your team didn't compete last year, right?
Yeah, no, we didn't.
So is this your first robot you're working on?
Yes,
wow.
Actually it is.
That is amazing. Well, guess what, Amelia? We're gonna have a lot of tips, a lot of tricks, and a lot of strategic advice for anyone, whether it be your first robot or whether it be your 25th robot. So it's we're gonna cover the gamut on all of it. Because that's what we're doing on tonight's show. We're doing a deep dive into the new First Robotics Competition game, Charged Up, presented by the Haas Foundation. So we're going to be diving right in there. Throughout the show, if you have questions for us or any of our panelists, drop them into the Twitch chat. We'll do our best to get to them when we can. And also remember, folks, we're here to celebrate excellence in our community and have fun. So let's keep the energy positive. Let's keep the vibes good. And let's just have a blast as we get charged up. Let's use up all our charging tons. Hey, Amelia, it is build season. And this can be a really stressful time of year for everyone who participates in this program, especially high school students, because you have so much going on between school exams, other extracurriculars. And so wellness is really important. I know it's a real priority for the First Canada Youth Council. So for today's wellness moment, is there something you'd like to share?
Yeah, for sure. So for today's wellness moment, I wanted to share the importance of, being active and how that can connect to our wellness. For example, like a healthy body is a healthy mind. So I just want to prioritize taking rest, taking walks outside. I know that helped me, especially during COVID with online classes, taking walks, even if it was just around the house. Getting outside, breathing in fresh air, but also like getting enough sleep is very important, especially for like this upcoming season, not only in robotics, but also for exams. I know I have to start studying for exams.
Right.
It's very like sleep is so necessary to have your mind and body fully functioning. So that is very important to prioritize.
The fresh air one, I'm really big on, especially during robot season, because you'll spend so long in the shop. Sometimes you'll go to the shop and it's dark, and when you leave, it's dark, and it's like, what just happened? And so my advice is, in a meeting, like, take a break, go outside with a couple friends for 5 minutes, just get some fresh air. There's snow on the ground, throw some snowballs at each other, just like have a little bit of fun, run around for a little bit. I know it's cold, it's miserable. I hate the cold. I hate being outside in it.
Yeah,
but
no.
Just get outside for a little bit. It makes a big difference. And by the way, we got people from all over the world tuning in. If you're one of those places where you get to build robots where there's sun and warmth, I am so jealous of you. I don't even know what that is like. Because to me, when I think of building robots, I think of being cold, because I am always like that was just like build season for me. It's like, take a train 3 hours to St. Catharines and just be cold or whatever. And so like, I don't build robots anymore. My favorite part of that is I'm warm on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm in my house and everything. Yeah, we got someone in chat saying hello from Texas, 80 degrees today. Like that's like 27 Celsius. Like, come on. Enjoy the weather, fam. Enjoy that. All right, folks, let's just do some quick news updates before we dive into this game with our great panel. The show schedule, what's happening on First Canada Live? So we're on this week. Next week's show is even bigger than this one because we'll be doing a global reveal of the Everybot designed by Team 118. And actually, we have Jenna from the Everybot team who's going to be on our panel today. So that's what's happening next week. Then we're going to be going every other week during the build season with regular shows about various first content here in Canada. And then once the competition season starts, we're going to be going every week during competition season. We'll be doing recaps of events on the Tuesday after the event weekend. So we'll be diving deep, looking at match video, analyzing some strategy, talking all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be a blast all the way through the Ontario Provincial Championship. For folks in Ontario, just a reminder that our events are back open to the public this year. There is no capacity limits. Everyone is welcome. However, remember, got to bring your mask, got to be masked up so we can stay safe and make sure that people aren't getting sick because, robots and cramped corners, this is the time. Like Amelia said, you want to rest up and strengthen up your immune system. Yeah. If you are in Ontario and you're on a team and you need some help this year or you want to help others out, I highly recommend that you join the FRC Ontario team Slack, where you can ask questions about the game, questions about your robot design. Want to buy aluminum tubing? We got a team in there that's selling that. There's all sorts of good stuff in there. So join that Slack group if you are from Ontario. Question in chat: do they have to be medical masks? No, it's not mandatory that they be medical masks, but we highly recommend that you protect yourself with a high quality mask like a KN95. Grade 12 students in Canada. First Canada scholarships, the Don Bosey Leadership and Innovation Scholarship and the Canadian Women in STEM scholarships. The deadline is January 31st. So this is a great opportunity for students who've been doing cool stuff in their school, in their community, and on their team to apply for, these very, very prestigious scholarships. Amelia, you're grade 11, right, Amelia?
Yeah, I'm in grade 11.
Okay, you got a year at least. You don't have to stress about scholarships yet. You don't have to stress about that piece yet. And for all the First Canada alumni who are watching the show right now, hey, we have a LinkedIn group that you should join, So if you're on LinkedIn, join the group that is coming into chat right now. And it's a way to connect with First Canada alumni we had First Canada alumni from all the way back in 1998. Hi, hello, the problem, it's me.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, like a long time ago. And we got recent alumni so you can connect, job opportunities, all sorts of things happening. All right, folks, that is the news, but I know what you're all here for. You're here to talk about Charged Up, and we're going to do that in 1 minute after a word from one of our sponsors, Enbridge Gas. All right, folks. So on First Canada Live, we don't mess around. When we're bringing in a panel to talk about a game as exciting as this one, we're bringing in the big guns. So introducing First Canada alum of Team 188, the Blizzard, and former mentor for Team 1241, Theory 6, current mentor and drive coach for Team 610, Crescent Robotics, First Canada game announcer and 2015 Volunteer of the Year award winner, Mr. Parth Patel. What up, buddy?
Hey, man. How's it going, Amelia? How are you?
I'm good.
Nice to be here.
I am great, man. I'm very excited that you could be here, but we got more. We've got first alum from Team 3184, Blaze Robotics from Burnsville, Minnesota, and current mentor of Team 118 and one of the leads for the Everybot, Jenna K. Foertsch is here. Hello, Jenna.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining your Canadian friends. Hey, Jenna, when we first met, you told me that you didn't believe that Canada existed. How do you, now you're on First Canada Live. Are we
Hey,
a real place yet?
until I step foot in Canada, it is not a real place. I stand by
Okay,
that.
we got to work on this, right? We got to work on this. But like, I introduced you to so many Canadians in Houston last year.
You're so true. And I'm from Minnesota, which is Diet Canada. So you think I'd
Right.
believe it, but
We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll keep working. We'll keep working. Also on the panel today, we got a First Canada alum from Team 771 SWAT, and now a mentor for Team 4476, the Waffles. Taegen Poles is here. Hello, Taegen.
Hey, how are you doing?
I am doing fabulous. How are you feeling?
Good. Living the dream.
So is it for you? Is like it alternates between like there's two seasons for the year, robot season and race car season?
They overlap perfectly. I love it.
It goes. For those who don't know, Taegen is a race car driver. Do you want to tell us what formula you do? And
Recently, racing in shifter carts. Last time I really raced internationally was in Italy in 2021. That was a lot of fun. Lots of pasta, lots of good travel.
just casually racing in Italy, it's like,
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we this is, like I said, this is an all-star crew. Everyone does awesome things. And speaking of all-star, we got a First Canada alum from Team 4252 Cardinal Robotics, former mentor of teams 3683 Dave, 1310 Runnymede Robotics, and I believe 7 other teams, and First Canada head referee. He's very busy wedding planning right now. Finally, we got Rishi Jotsinghani. What's up, man?
Hi, all. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Hey, congratulations on becoming a head ref.
Thank you. That's super hype. I love reffing, and so first time.
What event are you going to be doing this year?
I will be doing Humber.
For college, so that'll be a good one. So now that you're like a head ref, we're gonna pepper you with the rules questions. You're the resource for this.
There is a great resource actually for everyone else, so don't take my word for it. Please read your manuals.
Right, and that's the disclaimer I'm going to start the show off with today. Hey, we're going to be talking about the Charged Up game, and the game is new to all 6 of us. So we may misstate a rule or something like that. Your number one resource, the number one thing all of y'all should be doing right now is on firstinspires.org, downloading that manual, reading it, and learning as much of it as you can. You don't need to commit it to memory, but you do need to, whenever you have a question, you're unsure of something, look things up. This manual is your Google search now, and it's right there for you. I keep motioning because I'm from the era where you printed the manual and you always held a copy of it, but now you just like Control F and stuff. I'll tell a story. My rookie year in first, it was kickoff day, and we're like trying to download the manual, and they're like, "This is a new file format that we're testing out. It's called PDF," and we had never heard of it. We had to download something for this. It was like the first time we'd ever used a PDF file.
I was so sure they just faxed it to you guys.
But they included a printed copy in the kit back then.
They did. There used to be a singular copy they did print.
A single printed copy, and that was like everyone was fighting for it or whatever, because like photocopy is expensive and everything. But yeah, I could tell all sorts of old robot stories, but maybe we'll do that another time. Hey, Charged Up game. So before we even start, let's take a look at how Charged Up is played and take a look at this fantastic game animation. So let's do that right now.
Welcome to the 2023 First Robotics Competition game, Charged Up, presented by Haas.
2 alliances of 3 teams each compete to score cubes and cones into their grid to charge up their community. The alliances earn additional points if their robots are docked to or engaged with their charge station. Robots start each match in their community and may be preloaded with either 1 cube or 1 cone. Each alliance may choose where to stage 4 additional game pieces. During the first 15 seconds of the match, robots are autonomous. Without guidance from their drivers, robots score preloaded game pieces, collect and score additional game pieces, and are docked to or engaged with their charge station. Charge station points earned during auto count towards a potential activation bonus. The grid has nodes specific to cones and cubes, and some where either a cone or cube can be scored. During the remaining 2 minutes and 15 seconds, drivers control their robots. Robots continue to collect cubes and cones from human players at their substations to deliver power to the grids in their community. Each community contains 3 grids. The center grid is the cooperation grid. A link is a line of 3 game pieces scored on the same row. Completing enough links earns the alliance a sustainability bonus. If each alliance scores at least 3 game pieces in the cooperation grid, the sustainability bonus threshold is lowered for both alliances. Robots are protected within their community and loading zones. As time runs out, robots race to their charge stations. Alliances earn points for each robot docked to or engaged with the charge station. Earning enough charge station points earns the alliance the activation bonus. The alliance that earns the most points wins the match.
You know, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But, first impressions, forget about me. I want to hear from our panelists. So who wants to go first? How about Rishi?
Yeah. So the first thing I thought when I saw it was like 2011 was like everyone's scoring on their own sides. They were making logos back then. Now you're just putting the cone and the cubes, but so it looked really fun. The field's really open. But yeah, I guess when I got deeper into it, it was a lot more, I guess, complex than I thought.
It's interesting you brought up 2011. And I think we're going to come back to that one a lot because there's definite similarities in terms of pick and place and what's going on, inflatable objects. But in 2011, there were 18 scoring positions. This year there's 27, and so it's how first FRC has evolved in the time because of COTS parts and various things that, people, we'll get into it. There's a lot of chatter right now. Is 27 spots enough? While back in 2011, when there was 18, it got maxed, close to max twice in elims, 1114 and 2056 did here in Waterloo. And then once a championship, a stacked qualification alliance, Holy Cows 148 and I want to say 1503. It was wild, but interesting to think about. Taegen, what do you think of the game? First impressions?
Looking at it, for me, it reminds me a lot of the FTC game that they have going on this year. The pylons in particular, very reminiscent of it, and the linkages. So something like that. When we were talking about prototyping, the first thing we did is we looked at our FTC team and said, "What did you do with the pylons?" So that gave us a good start there. Interesting how Rishi mentioned it's a very open field, except where it's not. There's a lot of pinch points, especially around scoring. So it's nice to have that balance. So really looking forward to seeing how it plays out, and the max score being achievable this year is definitely something that'll spice things up.
Yeah, and when you talk about congestion, it's in some games you're very used to congestion from your opponents. This year, it seems like most of the congestion could be from your teammates in the community when everyone goes to hang out in the community right there. That's a term I'm still getting used to, but we'll get there right there. Parth.
Yeah, I mean, I love protected zones. This game has given me lots of them. I don't know if I necessarily like it as much as this game is providing it to me. But as a drive coach, I mean, one of the things that obviously I like to think about is what does it look like in match play for me be driving around specific parts? And I think I like the way this field is laid out. I think there's some interesting elements going back to 2016 with the secret passage, similar to how loading stations are adjacent to scoring zones. So I think there's some interesting elements of play there as well.
Parth, have you been focusing on those protected zones when you've been thinking strategy so far? It feels like something you might do.
I mean, you know what? As a drive coach, I certainly like knowing where my robot is allowed to be and where my opponents aren't allowed to be. And I certainly pay a lot of attention to where my bumpers and their bumpers are and where the tapes are.
Just happen to have your bumpers in the right spot, and if they tap you, that's free.
Or if I tap them.
Or if you tap them, even worse. All right, Jenna K. We know you've been very busy, probably busier than all of us, because you're mentoring your team, but you've also been working on the Everybot. So,
right.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing whenever I see a game is my brain has to be in 2 places at once, which is 118 land. What is a 118 bot going to look like? What is it going to want to do? And then also Everybot land, and those are 2 separate areas. But from an Everybot perspective, it's very much like how can we make this robot as competitive as possible, and like what makes sense, right? So we in my head, I start ticking through the what can the robot do, like on all fronts, because that's the first thing that both 118 and Everybot does, is like every single thing that we can think of, what are the functions, you know? So that's immediately where my brain goes. But also those congestion zones, like that's going to be a big deal. I'm concerned about that, but I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. The gameplay is going to be really fascinating this year.
What about you, Amelia?
When I first saw this game, first of all, I want to say that the animation, I was like, whoa, that's something I want to go into in university anyway. So I was like, oh, this is so cool how the power is coming down from the windmill. And my favorite part is the charge stations. I don't know, it's something about it. I really like how in autonomous you have to drive like towards it and kind of like line your robots on there. It's going to be really interesting to see. But yeah, and the cooperation part, I was like, wow, that's really cool.
All right.
So yeah, I'm just really excited.
There's a lot of different dynamics there. And it's interesting because, you know, like all the veterans and the old timers, we didn't say anything about the charge station or cooperation. So it's just like different perspectives. There's something for everyone in this game. So, you know, when you're starting to think about a game, well, the first thing, you know, you got to think about is your drivetrain, because you got to be able to move. But the next thing, and we'll talk drivetrain because there's a lot of stuff out there. FRC's changed over the years, you know, but acquisition and release of game pieces. So we got cones, we got cubes. To start off, let's take a look at a field tour video so you can see how these will be introduced into the field. Or maybe we will wait on that video. So let's keep going. But hey, Parth, I hear you have cones and cubes in lieu of a video.
I have a physical cone right here. I mean, okay. I can move away and closer, but it looks like any cone you've ever seen in your life. There's quite a bit of play to them. They're quite squishy and rubbery. So for anyone who hasn't held one yet, you know, they're quite flexible. If that matters to you. And the cubes, which I don't like calling them that because Karthik, as a math person, can you give us maybe like what your take on this cuboid is?
It's I mean, cuboid would probably be the best definition of it. Because it's not well defined enough to have in a geometric space to give it a fully defined proper name. So we'll go with that. I've been calling them like cue balls because it's like it basically behaves like a ball, and we'll get to that ball. But let's take a look at a video right now of these game objects.
Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Fiona. This video covers substations. Human players use substations to enter the game pieces onto the field.
Each alliance has 2 substations, a single and a double.
The center of the single substation is 7 foot 8 inches from the alliance wall. It has a chute that allows cones and cubes to fall to the floor just inside the field. The opening of the chute is 2 foot 3 inches from the carpet. The opening is 1 foot 10 3/4 inches wide and 1 foot 6 inches tall. Each chute is backed by a door that the human player must open to release a game piece.
The double substation is adjacent to the opponent's driver stations. On the field side, it has a grate in front of a ramp sloping to the floor. Human players using the double substation enter game pieces in one of 2 ways. The first way is to put a game piece on the shelf, which slides in and out of the portal, and using its handle, position it for the robot to retrieve. Thank you. The second way is to drop a game piece directly onto the ramp so it slides to the floor.
Human players operate in the substation area behind the alliance wall and next to the opponent's alliance's area. Game pieces start the match staged in storage trays. The game manual has a diagram of the field with official measurements and tolerances. You can also download CAD models of the field from the Playing Field webpage.
Good luck, and we'll see you at the competitions.
All right. So Parth, because you asked, so technically there's not really a name for this shape, but like a square with rounded corners is technically a squircle. And some people have been using the name Sphube for like sphere, cube, which just seems terrible all around. And we're never going to say that again.
No.
But yeah, so it's a cube. All right. So we've seen the game pieces, and Parth, you touched on it right now, because the cube basically behaves like a ball. Except it's got an advantage over a ball in that when you have a ball, you have to worry about it rolling all over the place and chasing it around. This thing just kind of sits when it drops onto the field, as we saw in that video. So, what should people be aware of with the game pieces this year, generally? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll go first because I'm holding one. But I think there's a lot of different takes on how to handle the different game pieces, but the biggest thing to be worried about with any inflatable game piece is obviously variance in the inflation levels. We've seen that year over year with game pieces, and then also making sure you don't pop them because, then you don't have a game piece anymore for practice, but also on the field, that's not good. So, I mean, be careful with the cubes, especially if it's the only one you have when you're practicing. The cones, we haven't spent a lot of time looking over the cones ourselves yet, so I'll defer to everyone else. But I mean, it's like a regular cone, but I don't remember the last time I ever built a robot to pick one of these up. So, I mean, it's going to be sort of different challenge for me to think about.
When I think about game pieces, and Rishi, you'll bond with me on this one, but as a mathematician, I think of symmetry. Symmetry is which axes is it symmetrical in, and the cube is pretty much symmetrical across all axes. You can approach that from any degree or whatever, and that's fine. The cone, on the other hand, when you have an object which has two unique orientations, that is very difficult. In my mind, I think the cone has at least 4 different orientations. So upright, down pointed away, down pointed towards, and down pointed to the side. I'll say both sides are similar. I guess upside down, but I'm going to ignore that or whatever. But that's 4 different cases you need to think about. So there's some real challenge right there. Anyone else with other things that I think people should be aware of with this game piece?
Yeah, I'll go. So I think the cube is very light, which I think is deceptively difficult because it may fly away. So if there's too much energy, it's just gonna like whoop. But I heard from someone that it's one of the lightest game pieces we've ever had. Someone correct me on that, but yeah, I think it's gonna be deceptively tricky. So
I'll hop on.
Sorry, Taegen, you
Oh,
go first.
I was gonna say I'll hop on that with the cube being so light. One of the biggest things, not only it being light, but like the different pressure that Parth mentioned. One of the really big things, like last year, is it's super important, if you can, to practice with it slightly deflated, properly inflated, and then a little bit overinflated, because if you're tuning for just that perfect like sweet spot, that's not realistic. It's not going to happen. You're going to show up to the competition and you're going to be sad. And the cone, we found that we were able to damage it quite easily. So in our early prototyping, the cone it's not popping like, the inflatable cubes might, but it does definitely take some damage, especially if you're practicing with wheels, traction wheels, like take a gouge out of it. So just be mindful of that. And yeah, the 4 different orientations are definitely making for a bit of a pain.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
This game is kind of unique in a way that the cone can get introduced in many different ways. The human player station just has like so many different ways to kind of do it. It's on the floor, and so I know a lot of teams will probably focus on basically one type of orientation. That's probably ideal for most teams. And there's a lot of robots, I think, in the past that could probably help you figure out how to do something from, let's say, the top, or something that's a little more symmetrical, like Karthik said.
So let's talk about this. Let's go around the room right here. And do you need to be able to pick up from both the shelf? I'm calling it the shelf because I don't know if it has a name. I don't know if it's like
It's called a shelf.
Really?
That's what it says in the manual.
Oh, I was
Perfect.
thinking, well, can't be the charge station, but like the
Nah, you're on it.
the
You're on it.
Energizer or something. I don't know. From the shelf or from the floor? Do you need to do both? I said the word need. By the
Yeah,
way.
that's an interesting word to throw in there. I mean, you don't need to pick up a cone at all if we're really going down the word of need. But I mean, it really depends on how you want to play the game. And I think this is where the strategic element comes in, and it's a lot of speculation too, but no, you don't need to do both. I think you could even argue you don't even need to pick it up off the floor necessarily. If you're going to drive all the way to the loading station anyway, then the only time they should be on the floor preset is during autonomous. And you could choose whether or not the cones are there, and instead you could replace them with cubes if you wanted to.
So the other thing though that I do want to mention about that, if we're talking need, you want to talk about frequency. So you can opt to go to the human player station every time, whereas if you are able, like it's obvious to say there's a strategic advantage to be able to do both, but if you're able to pick them up off the floor over just the shelf, there are more opportunities because the human player can just drop it onto the floor for you anyways, and then you can also steal opponent located pylons wherever they may be. The other thing to note too is that if you're not bringing them in from the shelf, there's the other chute, and you want to practice using the proper material, which way they're going to fall. Because a lot of people are saying, hey, if you test it with plywood, it's more likely to land right side up. If you use the field standard HDPE, it falls and lands on its side. So if you're thinking frequency, and if you could only do one or the other, personally, I think it's way more often that you're going to be picking up from the ground, but then it's way more of a pain. So if you can only do one well, go for the floor, in my opinion, but that's harder.
I'm going to hold this right here before I forget this thing. Because Taegen, you mentioned about testing with accurate conditions. Here's my number one thing. If you're testing an intake, test on carpet. Don't test on your floor. Test on carpet. If you're going to show me a video of you testing on the floor, I'm just going to say, go away and show me on carpet, because it's totally, totally different. The more discreet one that a lot of people forget is test on a completely clean object and also test on a dusty object, because at events, you might get objects on Friday morning that are completely clean, and you'll definitely have objects on Friday afternoon that are a complete disaster. So make sure you're touching them there. Jenna, I saw you unmuted at one point, so I know you have something insightful to say on this topic.
I do. So right now, from the Everybot perspective, we have people acquiring cones and cubes from the substations. I think that's what they're called. And if we happen to figure out the floor, that's a happy bonus. But it's our philosophy that a simple yet competitive robot is one that's going to actually ignore pieces from the floor and get them from the single substation or the shelf. Because acquiring a game piece in a known location and orientation simplifies the mechanism dramatically. So that's like our current mindset, but I know we're still gunning for that floor. We'll see if we can get it.
And so you hit it right there, because we talked about the cone with the 4 orientations, but for you, it's not the 4 orientations, if you're going to ignore that. So that's why it makes it so much easier. So that's a really interesting one. I think the other thing that's worth thinking about is that before, so like in 2017 with gears, there's gears on the floor. If you can't pick up that gear on the floor, it's dead to you. It's just, it's a waste. But this time, if there's something on the floor, you could possibly push it into one of the low slots. Now, I'll say this, pushing into those low slots is not as easy as it looks, because they got walls there and you have to like get it into a direct thing. It's not just like shoving it into a zone, but just throwing that out there.
The pylons probably don't roll that well either.
Pardon?
I mean, the pylons probably don't roll that well either when you're pushing them. I think, I mean, if you've ever seen a car like run over a pylon, maybe I'm exposing my inner Brampton here, but like it just, it's not so pretty.
I resent that.
But is he wrong? Is he wrong?
No, but I resent
the insurance companies would say he's right,
I'm not disagreeing with him.
Parth is a fellow
I
Brampton
resent
resident.
it. That's all.
Yeah, how much did your insurance go up, Rishi, when you moved to Brampton?
Actually, Markham was pretty bad. I will say.
Markham,
pretty bad?
Markham's pretty bad. Yeah.
So it went up, just not that much. But...
Sorry, Jenna, for this very niche Toronto conversation right now.
I'm like nodding, like I understand, and I have no idea what's happening. I'm like, yeah, totally, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever they say.
But to Karthik and Rishi's point, like practice, if you're going to push it around the ground, make sure it's on carpet, because the coefficient of friction is just going to be different. Make sure you do it on carpet. And I think the other one is, if you're interested in promoting game pieces once they're scored, there's a potential to also consider picking up cones that are already scored by an alliance partner and then promoting them to another level. I mean, that's something we talked about in our strategy meeting. I'll be honest with you right now, maybe, you know, my kids won't be happy that I said this, but we're not going to be focusing on doing that on 610. It's something we eliminated pretty early on. But, you know, I mean, it is something worth talking about. And it was an interesting point of discussion for us, for sure.
And it goes back to what Jenna said. You know, one of the first things the team should do is, well, at least one philosophy is list every possible thing a robot can do and then categorize it. And it's important to think of those more discrete ones because sometimes people forget them. So we talked a lot about the cones, but my question is, do you need to do both cones and cubes? Can you do just one? Can you hyper focus?
Definitely, you can focus, especially if you are like, I mean, I'm not that I'm team cone or anything, but like there's more cones than there are cubes. So if you're gonna pick one and you're able to do the cone, there are more spots that you can score the cones than there are that you can score the cubes. So if you're making your priority list of all the items that you have, we do the same and then categorize them into like must, should, could, won't. You know, if you're picking which one you're going to focus on and you're looking at just sheer volume, but again, you don't want to overbuild. So if you're worried about picking up something and you're looking at all these 4 orientations, I can't do it. It's totally fine to just go for cubes and be like a solid cube score. It's like Hatch versus Cargo Bots in 2019.
There was some great panel bots that year.
Absolutely.
Anyone else have thoughts on cones versus cubes?
I guess either way, if you're just focusing on one, you can still score 3 links. And so if you're working together with a teammate to kind of get that RP, it can be very beneficial.
Let me just say this. If a robot's scoring 3 links on their own, they're elite.
Very good.
They're
robot.
very,
Yeah.
very, very, very good. Like, I mean, I don't want to turn this into Karthik's lecture on cycle time theory, but you know, the average team.
I think you should.
Quickly, the 842 rule, 8421 rule. The 8421 rule is that the elite team, 99th percentile, with no defense, typically does about 8 cycles per match. I actually went through the data back to 2005 for every single cycling game, and it holds really tight. The only exception was last year, and I'm going to talk about that at Championship this year as to why last year was a jump and whether we should expect it to be a jump. 4 is the 95th percentile, sorry, not 95th, 86th percentile robot, which I use because it's 2 standard deviations above the mean across the bell curve, typically doing 4 through defense on average, 4 cycles per match. By the end of the season, we're talking by the end of the season. Average, sorry, 75th percentile is when we get down to 2, 50th percentile is when you get down to 1 game piece per match. So just things to be thinking about. I'll pull the data when we have a break, when we go to a commercial break, I'll pull it up here so we can take a closer look at it. But it's important to consider where all this stuff plays in that don't, you know, if you're like, oh, I need to do 12 cycles. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. These are teleop cycles or whatever, but these sorts of things kind of apply. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I need to be able to do both objects. Does it provide true value? Absolutely. Absolutely, it provides true value. Do you need to? I don't know. It's also important to remember that this is game theory.
Of course, yeah.
Everyone else is making the same decisions right now. And if everyone makes the same decision, then suddenly you might have some weird situations. So, but then game theory is like, I know that you know that you're thinking that, and suddenly, you know, we're Princess Briding it all up and someone's going to drink the poison. So a lot of thoughts there. Okay, so now we talked about the cones and we've, you know, there's so many trade-offs. You need to deal with cones that are tipped over. Sorry, go Rishi.
Sorry about that. One of the things that I know we didn't mention was auto. So doing the whole floor pickup versus human player station, you're going to need to be able to pick up from the floor if you want to do another game piece out, like within auto.
Right. Now, I don't have the data handy on this one, but most teams definitely do not do more than 1 game piece in auto.
Definitely.
That is not a normal thing. It is very cool that some teams do 4 things in auto or whatever, but you know, it's neat that you start with a preload and you're right there this year. You're right there. So that's a very cool opportunity.
And in auto, it's just 1 orientation. Well, hopefully, one orientation that you really have to worry about. And so you can kind of simplify. Maybe I just don't want to be able to pick up in every orientation, but at least standing, I can still set that goal for auto.
And we're gonna talk more auto. We're gonna talk more in a bit. I know it feels like we're going long here right now, but this segment is probably the most important segment. So I want to kind of get through the things. But so is it okay if you're doing cone pickup from the floor to not to deal with the ones that are tipped over?
I mean, the trade-off there is to consider how many cones do you think are likely to be on the ground, and how many of the ones that are on the ground do you think are going to be right side up, upright. So, I mean, just realistically, game pieces tend to tumble as they end up on the floor. I don't remember game pieces that ever like landed either off a robot, off the loading ramp, whatever it is, and they land on the ground and they don't at least tumble. Even the cubes, like they don't go very far. Sometimes they do, depending on the momentum, but they do tumble. Sorry, Karthik.
Well, what I was thinking of the 2015 game, because there was a ramp to load stuff. And so Amelia, you probably weren't around for this game, but there was a ramp to load these big totes, and you would slide them in. And then if most teams pick them up in a normal orientation, flat, someone would drop one in and it would tip over. And then they drop another one in and tip over and then suddenly they'd have like 6 totes blocking the whole thing or whatever. Sometimes these game pieces have a mind of their own. So
And to that point, I think one of the reasons we were really considering in our discussion is what happens if most teams decide to go away from the knocked over cones. Now there's a litter of cones outside the loading station, and it's the only place you can get cones from for the whole match. And you can't get to the ramp because these cones are blocking your path from getting to the ramp. So now you have to pick up a knocked over cone, which could happen in a match. And Karthik 2015 is exactly the example I was thinking of. So thanks for bringing that up.
Well, I got a funnier theory coming up, a funnier situation when we talk about where do you want to store? Now that we figured out, okay, let's say we've all figured out what we're doing with these game objects. We pick them up somehow, whether it be from the floor or from the shelf or from if they're upright or whatever. Where do you want to score them?
I mean, ideally, you want to score them as high as possible. You want to score them if you're aiming for links like right beside each other, and so that'll probably change a lot of how you. And
so how hard is it to score high? Because I think this is a misunderstanding of this game. I think it's actually a misunderstanding of physics.
I think people are going to underestimate how far it is.
It's only 4 feet high. What do you mean? It's not that high. It's only 4 feet high.
There is to my understanding, a hard block right around where the first level is, and you have to reach over to the third level. And so that distance, I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but
3.5 feet.
3.5 feet is. Imagine taking like something in your robot and extending out that far.
Hey, guess what? Everyone on this call, none of us have a 3.5 foot arm. None of us are Shaq, So or Mr. Fantastic. It's long.
Yeah, I mean, I think to consider 120-inch perimeter, if you max it out to a square and you go 30, 30, 30, or you build longer and you go, 36 is a common length for robots or whatever, you're talking about extending outside your frame perimeter with something that is longer than your literal robot length. And then you're talking about holding something 3-4 feet high, and this thing has potentially weight on it. I mean, the cube is relatively light, but the pylon has a little bit of weight, not significant.
Well, your intake probably has some weight.
But your motor and your mechanism has weight all the way out there, all the way away from, all of the mass on your robot that is over here. Certainly there's a lot to consider there. And I think I was just doing some 2D sketching yesterday when I was home, and that as one does during build season. And I think my jaw dropped when I drew some lines in there, and I was like, oh my God, these numbers can't be right. So I double checked all of my scale calculations because I thought I was doing it wrong. And I was a little bit shocked as to what that reach actually means and looks like relative to your robot like size.
Jenna K, Everybot put out a list of what y'all are your musts and the such. Was scoring high one of them?
So it wasn't. Right now we are looking to do bottom and middle, and we may be able to do high as a fun treat, but we don't think it's completely necessary. If you're like a world-class team, like
Yeah.
really gunning for that, you're gonna need it. But it's deceptively tricky. I remember first watching the game and I was like, oh, cake, like we can do all three.
Yeah.
And then we looked at it like everyone else and we're like, oh, like that reach is wild. And there's gonna be some like really bad CG problems, like center of gravity problems, and people trying to do that. So go ahead.
Center of gravity problem. This is what I want to talk about. This is the point. You know, there's going to be an event this year. You know, I might be emceeing, Parth, you might be the game announcer, Rishi, you might be head referee, Taegen will probably be hanging out in the question box. You know, we'll all be just like chilling down there. And there's going to be a team that's trying to score. They got their cube, they got their long arm, and then their partners, we have like really great partners. And it's like, this is a match, man. 6 links, 7 links, we got it. We got this, no problem. Their partner's going to reach over, they're going to fall and block 9 scoring locations. Yep. And we are all going to cackle and just be like, oh man. Just
as long as it's not me, as long as it's not us.
I mean, you're in the question box for a reason.
Is that not going to be a thing?
Oh, for sure.
Definitely.
This is going to be like 20. Remember 2016 when teams would get stuck on the defenses and then like you can't. It's like, oh great, well, no more moat for me. You know,
Jeet definitely doesn't remember. He's in chat, but he doesn't remember robots getting stuck on defenses.
Oh no, you brought it up. I didn't say it.
Great.
Wow. Sorry, Jeet. Sorry,
J
bro.
Dynasty.
There's a lot. All right. You know, we bring this panel together for a reason, and we got some of the best strategic thinkers in FRC here today. So I want to know, how important are links?
Depends on if you want to be the best robot or the best seeding robot. If you want to be picked first overall, okay. So seeding, obviously there's the rule or the ranking point for you get your 5 links or 4 with competition, you get the ranking point. If you just want to be the best robot at the event and you want to pump out cycles, you do not care about links because you're just pumping out cycles. That's why, like, if you're doing low and you're doing 9 cycles, you can still get picked pretty well because the point difference isn't huge and you're still able to pump out a lot of cycles. So if you're going for that robot, like in another year, it'd be like a robot without a climber, right? Not that I've ever built a robot without a climber. If you want to be first overall picked and you're pumping out more cycles than anybody, who cares? If you want to seed, you probably want to focus on the links and the strategic placement a little bit more.
So I was just talking to Taegen the strategist. Now I want to talk to Taegen the scout. If you are a scout, and this is questions for everyone, but Taegen started here.
Sure.
If you are a scout, is your #1 metric going to be cycles per match?
No, it's points.
Weighted cycles per match, probably.
Yeah, it's points per match. So if you're doing, what's the difference? 5 versus 3 or something?
5, 3, 2.
Okay, you can do 2 high cycles or you can do like 9 low cycles. It's obvious. It's the same as any year where you've got a robot that can score really well and can't climb. If the point differential makes up for it, who cares how they're getting the points?
I think that's really, really good advice. And you just answered the question perfectly, because of course you are, you. Is that we get so caught up in cycles per match because it's just been cycling games where just all cycles are equal, but not all cycles are equal in what they're going to contribute to a win. And so I think when, you know, that's really important to think about. I also think that the link, remember, does have point value too. And so is it, you know, if you're looking at points, and you probably have to do a weighted of the link, like how much of that link did they contribute to? And there's probably something for a metric for intelligent placement, you know, like did this team create links, or was there a link on the board and they went off the board?
Yeah, I was just going to say to answer the question of like, if I'm a scout and what I'm looking for, I think intelligent placement of game pieces is huge. I think the coordination required to make sure you don't tip over and block an entire grid from your alliance, and then also making sure you're not getting in each other's way and forcing someone to get stuck under the ramp or whatever. I think it's really important that drive teams on an alliance can coordinate, but also just know what they need to do without having to constantly be talking to their alliance partners, just know what the situation in the game is. So I think, you know, like knowing when you need a cube and when you need a cone is going to be very, very important. And knowing which is right is going to be a huge part of how you play this game and how you appear to play this game to others.
Final thing on game pieces and scoring, at least for now. If you are on a drive team, how hard is it going to be to see the links?
How tall are you?
Well,
That's a good point.
Your own height, Taegen?
Oh, well, then it's going to be impossible.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's robots in the way. There's the charge station. The lower level specifically is going to be pretty difficult.
Rishi, you're
especially
like
from your angle.
5'10".
Yeah, 5'8", 5'9". Yeah.
Yeah. How well do you think you can see?
Because I'm not driving, I get to run around. Back and
Right.
forth,
You're
but-
a rep. You better be able to see them.
Yeah, but yeah, it's for a student that's like driving the robot. It's probably going to be pretty difficult, definitely from a stationary view, and so you're going to have to coordinate with kind of your teammates to figure out where placement has to go.
Have they released what the real-time score looks like, or is that usually like a mid-season team update?
I think that comes out later. I haven't
Yeah,
seen
it's not
any.
out yet.
I'd be
SMS
curious to see if it gives like a preview, like if it's got a grid, although that'd be like 54 grid elements on a screen. Oh, shoot. Like it might as well just put an Excel spreadsheet up there.
I mean, to
Wait,
be
did it
fair,
for
they've done it
FTC?
in 2007. So like that grid was pretty obnoxious to look at.
Yeah, that grid was 24. So this
Yeah.
is still more than twice that. So
FTC had like a huge like cube on their live scoring, and you could see like where everything was placed, and it was pretty nuts.
Also,
Okay.
do you get the right to look at your opponent's cooperation like on top of your grid too? Like in theory, right? It matters to you if you see if they're going for cooperation or not. So do you get that, or is that the responsibility of the coach? Probably the latter. Is probably the coach's
well,
job to
it's
know
definitely
if
the coach's
cooperation-
job.
well,
Yeah.
But
Sure.
if you're talking about like real time.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot of dynamic stuff to this game, and we've only scratched the surface. So let's shift gears. I know. Now let's talk about the charge station. And before we talk about the charge station, let's take a look at a video to see how the charge station works.
Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Jay. This video covers the charge station. There are 2 charge stations on the field, one for the Red Alliance and one for the Blue Alliance. Each charge station is located in its community near its grids.
The top of the charge station is 8 feet by 4 feet. It pivots on a double hinge. This means it will come to rest in a level state when nothing is on it. The official charge station may react differently from the one you build at home due to build material differences.
When level, the top of the charge station is approximately 9 inches off the carpet. In this state, the ramps are 34¼ degrees from the carpet.
The surface of the charge station and its lead-in ramps are polycarbonate. The lead-in ramps pivot and slide as the top surface moves. When the charge station is fully tilted, the lower ramps are 11 degrees from the carpet, the top surface is 15 degrees from the carpet, and the upper ramps are 71½ degrees from the carpet.
The lead-in ramps allow a robot to drive directly onto the charge station without having to use an actuator to tip it. Here we've got the kit of parts drive base with legal 2023 bumpers. Notice how it's able to drive right onto the charge station.
Rockwell Automation limit switches determine if the charge station is level. To be considered level for scoring, the surface must be within 2½ degrees of horizontal. Lights, which are installed just under the surface and match the charge station's alliance color, indicate if the surface is level.
Cable protectors extend from the center of the charge station to the closest field border. Cable protectors are approximately 7 inches wide and 7/8 of an inch tall.
The game manual has a diagram of the field with official measurements and tolerances. You can also download CAD models of the field from the Playing Field webpage.
Good luck, and we'll see you at the competitions.
All right. Charge station is pretty cool. It's pretty dope. What do people think?
It is very cool. I think the ramp is like it's insane how it looks. So it just kind of flattens out at a certain point, but I think people are gonna kind of underestimate because of like how big the kind of bar under it is to keep it stationary.
Jenna, have you built one yet?
One of the charge stations?
Yeah.
Ish. We built like half of one.
Okay.
And we think that there are going to be some real tiny chassis this year. Some
Really?
real skinny robots.
Why do you think
Yeah,
that?
I think so. I mean, to fit all 3 on there, it's like if I was looking at a pick list and I saw 2 robots that were like virtually similar, except one of them had a baby chassis, we're going with that one, right? That's just basic strategy on that front. But yeah.
Reminds me of 4001 in 2012, like the little skinny robot that makes the difference on the bridge.
Yep.
Absolutely.
43-34. Einstein, baby.
Yep.
Should have won champs, But hey, he's a billionaire now, so it works out.
It all worked out.
It all balances. It all balances.
Someone won, yeah.
Shout out Alex. Shout out Alex Rodriguez. Here's an interesting question. How difficult is this compared to last year's endgame challenge? And I know they're very different, and it feels like you're comparing apples and oranges, but they both happen at the end of the game, so they're sort of the same fruit.
That is the honest way to phrase that comparison. They both happen at the end of the game. Okay, Karthik.
But
yeah,
they
we'll
don't
roll with
only
that.
happen at the end of the game.
Okay, true.
Like
That's
one
not
happens
even
in
true.
auto as well. Like I don't even
Okay.
know where
But they're both like
they're
endgame
end
mechanics.
game. Yes, they're end game mechanics. I think, I guess to answer your question directly, how difficult is it compared to last year? As a team that didn't even consider doing the end game last year, and as a team that's considering trying to do the end game this year, possibly in auto and possibly at the end, end game time, I guess we seem to think that we have the resources and the ability to do this end game more readily than last year. Now, that's not to say it's any easier per se, but I think you could do this and you could participate in this end game without a dedicated mechanism. You just need really, really good drivers who know what they're doing. And that's probably not the best way to do it. And I'm not suggesting everyone just say, screw it, we're not going to build for this and just drive up the ramp and hope for the best. But it's possible. You can participate in the end game without a mechanism.
So what mechanism would you use? Just throwing things out there.
I mean,
3 days into the season. So
I mean, there's lots of different things to consider. I mean, okay, you could at least do some software assisted stuff with gyros and sensors and automation and have that to at least help your drivers and
the programmer.
Indeed. But I think the other thing to consider, and some of us are older and know about older games, but 2012 Rebound Rumble, there were bridges that needed to be balanced. However, be careful, because the way in which you balance those bridges in terms of like how the robots are oriented with regards to the movement of the bridge, I think it's different. And it could play differently with this one. So not everything that worked there will work here, but there are some interesting ideas there that you can use to help.
Also worth remembering, the bumper rules have changed since then as well.
Right.
And so that could play into this. How hard is it to drive up this thing? We saw a kickoff that a kitbot did it pretty easily. Do we think it's that easy?
I think the angle is like 34 degrees or something, and so
in the steep position, it goes 11 shallow.
So it can be tough if your bumpers are too low. I would say you can definitely just like run into the side and it won't be hard. But assuming you can get over that edge, I imagine it should be fairly easy, but I haven't tested it personally.
Okay, so here's a physics question for y'all. So 2 robots are on there. Okay, 250-pound robots, with bumpers and batteries. And there's a skinny robot that's coming up last. Will that bridge be stuck in the 35-degree position, or will it be able to tilt to the 11-degree position with the weight of those 2 robots? Because like what we've seen so far is first robot drives, hits it. One robot goes, it switches to 11 degrees, it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Does that happen when there's multiple robots on there?
Honestly, I just tell the little robot to drive around to the shallow side, because one side's going to be shallow and one side's not.
Yeah, I mean,
no, but what I'm saying is,
I
like,
think his point is, even if it's level, can they bring it down?
Yeah, you see what I mean, Taegen?
Like if they're already on and they're balanced, then how does a third robot get on without those other 2 robots moving? Is I think really what his point is.
It's also not impossible to get on a level bridge.
That's the question.
Yes, like it's not impossible, but they also need to be lined up well, that they're not going to run into the other robot.
I think it's important for teams to obviously make sure you can climb in the 11-degree position, but probably, because this is the hard thing. Most teams do not have access to a second drivable robot to test this sort of stuff on. Heck, most teams won't have an accurate charging station. But that's the thing. There's There's a
So
lot to
for
this.
that, what I would say, if you were able to keep your 2022 robot intact in any shape or form, test it with that. We did that we took a stack of plywood, like 2x4s, one piece of like sheet. We threw a piece of Lexan on it to mimic the coefficient of friction, and we had our 2022 robot try to drive up it to see if we could do it.
How'd it feel?
It was a little scary at first, but we were able to make it work with our 2022, and the bumper rules haven't changed very much.
Okay.
But it does require a little bit of incoming velocity, and if you've got two robots on either side that you're trying to fit in the space, it requires practice. We also have the benefit of having a swerve robot from last year. Not all teams will have that to either practice with or build this year, and that gave us some extra flexibility.
Hold that thought on swerve, because we're going to come back to it in just a minute after word from one of our sponsors, Centerline. You know, there is a lot to this game. Like, we've been going for 50 minutes right here, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface. There is a lot. Amelia, what do you think of this game?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a challenge. I know my team, we spent the Saturday like brainstorming and just getting like ideas down. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what teams come up with.
I am more excited after this 50 minutes so far of discussion. We got more to go.
Oh, yeah.
So Taegen, you said the S word, swerve. And I think we should talk about it, because last year at the championship, 61% of the robots who made the playoffs in the Houston championship were swerve drive robots. That's an obscenely high number. That's just unheard of. When before you used to have six total swerve robots at championship. Now 61% of the playoff robots, 22 of the 24 Einstein robots were swerve. We're going to localize here for a moment, Jenna. So it's going to go Ontario, very Ontario specific. Taegen, Rishi, how many swerves were there in Ontario last year total? 5?
Approximately. It wasn't that
5
many.
or 6, yeah.
6, yeah. 11, 14, 20, 56, 44, 76,
40,
other Kingston
39.
team, 40, 39,
Thunder
2013. So 7.
7.
Yeah, 7. Okay. That's that number's going up this year.
For sure.
For sure.
How much does swerve help this year?
I mean, it seems to be, in terms of cycling, it seems to be probably one of your better solutions if you're going kind of around the.
Yeah, I think it's definitely better, but how much does it help?
So I think the biggest gain it has, I would say that the biggest point that it helps with is kind of lining up when it comes to scoring. I think that's going to be a big part of it. Like, a lot of people talk about like, oh, turret versus swerve, but just being able to quickly get into position, score, and then leave is going to be huge. So I think it's going to be pretty big in that sense. The bridge or the charging station is probably going to be a little bit of a problem, but for some of the swerve bots, but I guess we'll see.
What do others think?
I think you're muted, Taegen. Yeah. Or your headphones died, but I'll take your spotlight.
Go for it.
So we didn't do swerve last year, and it's certainly a debate for us as well about swerve versus not swerve. I think the one thing I could see swerve doing is helping eliminate the 4 orientation problem with cones. Like, it gives you the option to potentially just swerve around and get to the right orientation. So maybe 4 becomes 2 or 3 orientations for the cone. I think that's an advantage if you really like the floor pickup and the knocked over cones, scoring like Rishi mentioned. So I think there is a significant enough advantage there. However, I think, with any cycling game, always consider that there's 3 parts to a cycle. The driving is only one part of 3. You still have to pick up a game piece from wherever. Swerve can't pick up your game piece. You still have to score your game piece, and the Swerve drivetrain isn't going to score your game piece. So there are still lots of ways to optimize. So if you're feeling like, oh my God, modules are sold out, we can't get our Swerve drive going this year, focus on the things you can control. And that's still 2/3 of a cycle.
Yeah. And by all means, folks, like, this show is aimed at a lot of different areas, and we've been talking about a lot of simple strategies and whatever, and then we just started jumping to Swerve, which is not simple or whatever. No one should feel like, oh, we have to do a Swerve. Like, that's no one's have to list. Swerve is expensive, it is complicated, and it is hard to find, although West Coast products and Rev are in stock right now, so might not be anymore, like.
Okay. Am I back, by the way?
You're back,
Good?
Taegen.
Okay.
You're back.
So one of the things too that I would say for the Swerve, if you didn't do a Swerve in the off season or in the 2022 season, I would caution you against looking at doing Swerve for the 2023 season. A, because it's expensive and it's, not always easy to get the parts you need, but also it's a big coding challenge. So when we did Swerve last year, we had already built a chassis. One of our students had made it like his COVID project to build, design, program a Swerve for us.
Some people
super valuable.
baked sourdough, other people made Swerve drives.
Exactly, exactly. And so if you're going to do Swerve, it is best if you have some experience doing it. Now, I'm not saying you have to, but there are definitely random Swerve bugs that you do not experience with Tank. And so kind of like buyer beware, I guess is what I'd say.
You know what my favorite drivetrain is? It's the kit drivetrain. It just comes in a box. Just pop it open. You cut it to the size you need to cut it to. You wait till Jenna tells you how big to make it, and then
exactly
you go right there.
Underrated.
Kit drivetrain is so good. It is so good.
610 did not opt out of the kit drivetrain this year. It's all I'm going to say.
There you go.
The time save is
who was known for
too.
the wildest drivetrains, and just like one of the forerunners of the 6-wheel and 8-wheel bots over the years. There you go. It's good enough for 610. It's good enough for everyone else. Hey, speaking of 610, Parth, in 2017, 610 had, in my opinion, the best cycling robot in the world. Why was that?
I think we took the elements of cycling and we said, look, we can gear for, we did have a shifter on that robot. We thought it was useful. Ironically, our driver hated the shifter and he never used it. But so it really, in the end, it was a moot point. But I think we spent so much time iterating how we wanted the gears to end up in our robot and how we wanted them to get out of our robot. And I mean, we were lucky that the first design we tried actually worked as well as it did, but it went through so many different iterations. And I don't think we were ever satisfied with how fast it was. I think that was the biggest key for me going back on that year. Like, we could do 5 in a match. Great. I want to get to 7, 8, 9 in a match. And how do we continuously improve? So, for us, the biggest thing was we want the gear. Like, if my driver says he's good, he's lined up, that gear should be out and he should already be driving away. Like, before he even has the brain neurons firing, he should be out of there.
And I want everyone to internalize what Parth just said, because I think that's the key this year to effective cycling, is how quickly you can release your game piece and be out of there and be like, I'm in the community, I'm out of the community. And there's an extra reason this year. There's an extra reason. It's not just about you need to score fast, but when you're in there, it's harder for your partners to be in there. And so the longer you take, you're not only slowing down your cycle, you're slowing down your partner cycles, and you've got to be in and out of there. Just in and out. It's got to go. It's got to blaze. So I think that's really important. We talked a little bit about autonomous, why it's important and the such. Does it matter if you score high or low in auto or mid?
Marginally. It's not like that point doesn't matter, but especially early on, score where you can score. The more important thing is getting that charging station. That to me is less important. A two game piece auto is less important than scoring on, or getting someone on that station.
Okay, so now here's the question. And again, we got some drive coaches and strategists here. You're on an alliance, and there are 3 robots who all have the ability to do the charge station in auto. Who gets to do it?
Who's done it the best?
Oh, wait. Okay, we got it. Rishi, Parth, Taegen, you're on an alliance right now. Who's doing it?
Well, I think it depends on.
I want to hear the discussion. I want to hear the discussion right now.
Well, it depends on what you can do otherwise.
And like, how many matches of data can I look back at? Like, not that I'm saying I don't believe Rishi, but like, if Rishi tells me,
I didn't even ask you how many you could score. You just...
no, but like data, like before we would even go talk to Parth and
100%.
Rishi, like
Yeah.
you look at the data, so you know what you're going into, you know who you're talking to. So
I think versatility is also important to Rishi's point. Like, okay, if I'm not going to do it, here's what I can do. Like, my robot is capable of doing X, Y, Z. And if you're eliminating Z, then I've got X and Y left. If that's good enough for our alliance, I'll do X and Y. But if not, one of you is going to have to give it up, and I'm doing the bridge. I think accuracy matters. I mean, how likely are you to actually get up and stay there? If you're, every 5 attempts, you're getting it done once, that's not ideal. I think it also matters, are you a single game piece robot? Like, if we as an alliance think it's more valuable for us to get 2 cones in auto and 1 cube because we want to just finish a link, not that in eliminations that's worth anything, but if that was a priority in a qualification match, then who can do cones, who can do cube? Like, I think there's a lot of different discussion around who gets to do that. I think the biggest thing, though, is going to end up being who is in the biggest advantage to be right in front of the charge station. Because I think having to drive around autonomously the charge station and going to score your preload is a challenge. Anyone who thinks that robots driving autonomously just go where you tell them to go and they end up exactly where they end up should try programming an autonomous routine.
Especially if you're trying to get the extra bonus for getting out of your zone, because then you have to get out of your zone and get back on, because it's not part of your community, or it is part of your community. So like, that's extra movement you've got to incorporate in there somewhere.
Maybe we could do a whole show dedicated to what I'm going to say next. And so maybe we won't finish it, but only one team can do it. And, Taegen, right away, you said how many matches have been played, how much data is there? How do you balance the need for making sure you get it to making sure a team has a chance to try it? Because this is complex. This is the first time in a long time where it's like, you're not just fighting to do it for the alliance. You want to possibly be picked for this. And so I can do it. My first match, I get there and it's like, hey, Rishi competed week 1. He's already done it. He's going to do it this match. Okay, my second match, I get there. Oh, Parth already did it in the first match. You didn't do it in the first match. And then this cycle all of a sudden, it's like match number 9. And there's always someone else who's getting to do it. This is a hard discussion, and maybe we should just talk about this on another show. But how do you solve these dilemmas?
I kind of want to jump in here because I think this is something personally I had to learn over the years on how to deal with properly, because being a drive coach, you have a lot of discussion with teams and like a lot of different data points. And the one thing I kind of go back to always is like, my job as kind of a drive coach is to make sure the teams that I'm playing with are comfortable and that they feel like we can all trust each other. And so in that sense, taking that, like what feels like a risk when you don't know what can happen with the data and stuff can sometimes be worth it, just on the fact that given that team that comfort or even that boost, if they do hit that charge station that they had never hit before, can really be beneficial, not only like later in eliminations, but just like within the match itself. Getting that kind of, if you've ever seen someone hit something for the first time, their whole drive team jumps up in the air and then the bell goes off and they're going back into the match. And I think that the trade-off has to be like, if you have to talk about like what happens if it works, what happens if it doesn't work, and kind of make those decisions and see if it's worth it. But at the end of the day, I think it's pretty important to give those chances, especially early in events.
Absolutely.
Jenna, you work with the Everybot. A lot of teams who are doing the Everybot, they're teams who are doing the Everybot because they're newer to first or they have less experience or whatever. How do you recommend they handle these situations where they've worked on their Everybot, they've got it, and they've spent 3 weeks coding that they can get up there, but people are just like, oh, your team 9,000 and whatever we don't want you to do this. This is so important for us. We're more likely to get the ranking point if we do it. How would you advise them to handle those discussions?
That's a tricky one. I think it's important to both view it from a strategic perspective, but also make sure to advocate for yourself, because like you deserve to be there. You built a robot. It works. So when you're talking to your alliance partners, like, be confident in your abilities. Like, you are building a robot that has this functionality. So don't let people tell you otherwise. But if they're like super confident and they're like, no, we're gonna do this, like, I don't know, pick your battles, I suppose. But it's definitely a tricky conversation.
I think it's important to think back to some of the lessons from Woody Flowers over the years when evaluating decisions like this, and what ethics means and what it means. We have, we talk about cooperation. Cooperation exists in this game, whatever. The real cooperation that happens at events is between alliances. And there's something to be said that your true victories at events is not just necessarily your ranking points, but how much growth you enable, not only your own team, but the teams around you. And I think it's important for everyone watching this to know that there's something to be said about trust, and there's something to be said about letting people shine, but also not blaming people when things go wrong, because that's part of trust. So I think this is an important discussion. It's very different than what our autonomous modes have been like for the last few years. There hasn't been this sort of battle, and I think it's important to think about for anyone who's going to be a drive coach, student or adult, before we get to events this year, to really talk amongst your team about how you're going to handle these situations. I didn't have this in the show doc at all, but it just kind of hit me, and I was like, we should talk about
Can I just
this.
add, Karthik,
Yeah.
that those conversations are also maybe to a different, the concept is different, but I think when you have conversations with your opponents before a match about competition, I think you should definitely be thinking about how you want to have those conversations ahead of time, because it is possible that you talk to a team and they refuse to, or let you know that they choose not to participate in the competition challenge in the game. And that is entirely their prerogative, but those conversations are also difficult. And I think it's very important that teams analyze what that's going to look like as well.
Also, teams should probably look at the updated human interaction rules, because there's a new rule in there this year that applies to some of these discussions. Enough on autonomous mode. Let's go quickly. Priority lists. We've kind of talked our way through it, so I'm just going to throw some quick hitters out here. People can answer, but if I had to make someone make a choice right now, floor intake or human player, Rishi?
I think I'm going human player.
Cubes or cones, Taegen?
Cones.
Score low or score high, Jenna?
It depends your goals. I can't answer that one quickly. Score high, ideally.
Okay. Swerve versus tank, Parth?
Tank. That's personal opinion.
Okay.
Ooh.
Amelia, big robot, full-size robot, or little robot?
That's a very good question. I think little robot for me.
Little robot for you. And for anyone, because we didn't get much into mechanical design today, and you shouldn't, it's so early, but arm versus elevator versus multiple joints.
I'm sad you didn't say launcher.
For you, bro.
For a good reason.
It is
For
legal.
a
I
good
checked the
reason.
rules. It is legal. You are allowed to launch the game pieces.
Okay, forget about
Your
that.
community.
All right.
Don't give Ibrahim any ideas, okay? He's on this call as a producer and he's been advocating it for our team all day.
I've got an idea for all of you. Drive onto the charge station or jump onto the charge station.
Jump.
Jump.
Jumping robot, best robot.
T4907, if you're watching, or anyone out there, they gave the recipe. They gave the recipe. I want to see someone do it.
I'm gonna turn into a trampoline.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love a Lexan trampoline. My favorite type of trampoline.
Trampoline, baby, trampoline. We're wrapping up here. We're running out of time, but we'd be remiss. We have the expert on here. We have the guru of the Everybot. Well, one of the many gurus. I know you've got a rock star crew over there. Jenna, what can you tell us a little bit about Everybot 2023?
Yeah, I have a bunch to say, but I understand we're running short on time. So if you need to stop me, let me know.
But you're coming back next week too. You're coming back next week.
I am.
So give people this is a teaser trailer. This is get them excited.
Sure. So we already posted the will list on Chief Delphi. Go give that a look. It'll show you what we plan on doing. As you know, like the last couple years, sometimes we end up figuring out additional bonuses that you will see in the reveal video. So maybe next week you'll see that we can do high and we can pick up from the floor. No promises, but maybe. So I mean, beyond that, you know, Everybots are going to be playing at all different levels of the game. And I would say an average match for a good Everybot is going to be, you know, scoring that preloaded game piece in Auton, getting that mobility point, running 3 to 4 cycles. We'll talk more about that next week on like what we think a few different good strats are, and then, you know, doing that charge station. So is that can I go longer, or
you go for another minute? We can, you know.
Okay, amazing. For some quick tips for Everybots this year, build one of the wooden field elements of everything that the Everybot does. So go look at that will list and be like, okay, you know, actually it's pretty much everything but score high right now. So if you have the capacity, that's going to be, you know, pretty helpful for you.
So while they're waiting, because, you know, you're working on documentation, finishing the robot, all that sort of stuff, this is the kind of things that they can work on right now to maximize their time.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So build the shoot, you know, post scoring location, install your software, game tools, VS Code, the chassis. I know like the chassis is the big one, like what's it going to look like? But that'll be posted in the next couple of days. Ideally, we just want to make sure that we don't change our minds on that and that everything is working how it's supposed to. So next week we have a lot to discuss and we are super excited.
Well, thank you, Jenna, for not just being here, but for this service that yourself, Team 118, NASA, and friends, because you have people coming in from the outside this year, I know, who are helping out. Thanks to all of you, because this is an invaluable service to the community. It has made the FRC community better, flat out, stronger.
Thank you. It's like an honor for all of us. It is a really fun thing to do, and it's really meaningful. And this year we have, you know, better documentation. I know there's videos coming out, lots of changes this year based on, you know, things that we think would be helpful. So shout out Foertsch in Michigan for giving us people to help with documentation. Thank you for that.
Hey, and for Ontario teams, if you were considering doing an Everybot, send an email to your program manager, William Neal, right away, because we are hosting a Everybot build session. So after Jenna releases the robot and the instructions, we're going to be bringing Canadian teams together who want to build this Everybot into a shop. And First Canada is going to do some of the heavy lifting, providing some like a little Everybot kit for teams. So with some pre-cut materials, the stuff that might be a little bit harder for you all to do. So make sure to stay tuned to your program updates for that sort of stuff. I want to talk about other resources that are out there. We talked about the Ontario Team Slack you can join. We talked about the Everybot, obviously. I want to talk about the Open Alliance. The Open Alliance may be one of my, other than the Everybot, one of my favorite things that has happened. There's a group of like now, what is it, like 100 FRC teams that just share everything that they're working on. And so if you go to the Open Alliance website, you can find teams. The three that are my favorites to look at, Team 3847, Spectrum, their blog is just phenomenal, the gold mine of information. Team 6328, Mechanical Advantage, again, just so many good tips in there from everything. And then a new favorite of mine was last year, Team 7407, the Wired Boars. Did anyone see them at Championship last year? They were wild. They hit like Turret Swerve, the 7000 series team, and it's like just awesome. Just golden stuff. Rishi, wait till you. I'm surprised they didn't grab you and say like, let's go look at this team.
I don't remember this one. Huh?
The reveal video is really impressive if you find it online. It's really good. There's stuff that they're doing in their program.
There's a couple Ontario teams who are doing Open Alliance this year, Team 3161, Toronto Titans, and Team 6070. So it's cool to see some representation out there. Anyone else have favorite resources that they love to go to?
For me, one of the things that Waffles did like day one was download the XRC simulator, because Charged Up is already on there and we were like playing matches day one of build season, and that answers the questions like visibility and stuff, because you can play from human player mode. There's even like a VR option now for those who have that capability, so that's a big one. And there's a big online community as well if you're interested, so you can get to play it virtually and get your eyes on some strategies and just get some experience.
Any other ones, folks? Resources?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think Open Alliance has a Discord too.
Oh,
And
nice.
and Everybot also has a Discord. So get on that Discord train. It is a nice place to meet people, form connections and look at what people are working on. Specifically for Everybot, we will be answering questions that are not in our FAQ on there, and teams answer each other's questions. So it's pretty helpful.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up now. I want to go around the room, ask everyone for one hot take prediction on this game. Anything you could think of that you think is going to happen this year that is a little bit spicy. So maybe we'll go to, well, we're starting with spicy. So I'm going to go to Jenna.
Yeah, so I have a whole soapbox about this that I guess I can get into.
All right.
We're out of time, but
yeah, no, you're good. We're good.
Are you sure? Yeah. Okay. So it is our belief that you are very unlikely to get the RP without co-op. I don't know if that's spicy, but in 2017 you started with 3 game pieces, and then you had to run like 9 full cycles, and the RP that year was pretty rare, only becoming less rare.
It didn't happen until week 4. It did not happen
exactly
until
so
like week 4 basically.
So 2023 starts with scoring a few, and then you pick up more that you can score, and you have to run, I think it's 8 full field cycles. We like to have a graph for it. I was gonna bring it just in case this came up, but I didn't. But and there's a more congested field, and there's more effective defense because people know how to do defense better. So it looks unlikely that you're gonna get that RP unless you get co-op, and then it looks reasonable because you only have to run like 5 cycles. So that is my soapbox.
I like
Thank
it.
you.
I love it. It's an analysis hot take. It's beautiful.
You know how much I love data and analysis.
Yeah. See, you're part of the crew. One of us. It's
the rocket scientist in me.
There you go. There we go. Parth.
Oh gosh. I think one of the community favorites for best scoring robot is not going to be a level 3 scoring robot.
Okay. That's a good one. I like that. Amelia.
I'm really looking forward to see like which teams have like the best alliances with each other, and like kind of seeing like those power like groups like just like come through how they work together. I think that's one part that's going to be really interesting to see.
Rishi?
My whole thing was the 3 small cyclers are back. Those chokes are going to be definitely way more bumper car-ish than people think, and so I'm excited to see another 2013 world champion type feel.
Okay. Taegen.
There will be, I think, at least one event. I want to say in Ontario, but like probably just like at least one event where we see double limbs, like we get a rematch of 1v8 in the finals.
That's a spicy take that we see a 1v8 final. That would be
there are some pretty deep events. They're pretty strong events. Newmarket's looking really strong. For week 1 in Ontario, we're coming out of the gate, but I think that's going to be, we'll see some 1v8 finals with the introduction of double limb.
All right, folks. This has been absolutely fabulous. We could have gone for hours and hours. Like there was way more topics in the show doc that we didn't even get to, but you know what? We'll do something again sometime, somewhere. We got a lot more shows throughout the season, so maybe we do a regroup with this. Thank you everyone for being here. We so appreciate your time, so appreciate the discussion. Thank you to everyone who's watching, because this is a lot of fun. This is why we do it, right? This is why we're here. I thought it was a very great discussion. Next week, we are coming back. We got the Everybot. Jenna's going to be here. Ethan and Ryan are joining. We're going to have Dan from Michigan, who's working on some documentation.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. And for everyone who's watching, I want everyone just to kind of remember, as we go through the build season, why we're here. And build season can be stressful and it can be aggressive, but we got to remember that it's number one, it's got to be fun. And that's, I was fortunate. This is the 25th anniversary of me starting first, and I would not have come back so many times if it wasn't for my teammates back then, who most of them, I have no idea where they are even on this planet. They're somewhere. They're somewhere. But those good experiences and just the positive vibes and the jokes and everything, just is why I come back every year and why I still do this even without a team and the such. So just remember that every small positive moment you have with your teammates is actually making a difference. And it's kind of what makes this program so special, aside from the wicked awesome robots, which we're going to be seeing in a few weeks. So thank you, everyone. This has been a great show. Subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know where we're going live next. And we will see everyone in a week. Good luck and get charged up. Bye, folks.